Chapter 3: How to Become a Superlover. Thus far, I have written mainly of techniques which you, a jealous person, can use to change yourself. By changing yourself, you are likely to have a positive influence on your partner. Now, however, let us look at methods that can affect the other person. Since the threat of losing your lover is always your first concern, whatever you can do to reduce that threat will make you feel better. Chapter 3: How to Become a Superlover. Thus far, I've written mainly of techniques which you, a jealous person, can use to change yourself. By changing yourself, you are likely to have a positive influence on your partner. Now, however, let us look at methods that can affect the other person. Since the threat of losing your lover is always your first concern, whatever you can do to reduce that threat will make you feel better. First, however, it is essential that you understand what love is all about. Many prevailing notions about love are incorrect and unrealistic. What I am about to explain about love comes from years of thought, reading, and counseling, and every day that passes convinces me more and more that my reciprocity theory of love is indeed valid. See Marriage and Loving as a Business. Mind you, I don't particularly like what I discovered. I wish human nature were different, but it isn't so. So, put aside any poetic and romantic ideas about love that you may have and look at this subject with objectivity. Love is that powerful feeling you have for anyone who satisfies your deepest desires and needs. People love you when, and only when, you please them. Love is self centered emotion. I'm referring only to love at the individual level, as encountered in romance, marriage, family, and friendships. I'm not referring to the concept of love for humankind or that which urges you to be our brother's keeper. That does not require reciprocity. When you send a care package to a starving family in a foreign nation, you don't know or particularly care who gets it, and you don't expect a gift in return. It's purely an act of generosity, and it's beautiful. Intimate love, on the other hand, always expects payment in return. Each of us has deep desires and needs, and if those deep desires and needs are not satisfied to a reasonable degree, we fall out of love. It's that simple. The idea that you ought not to place any conditions on love is noble, but it doesn't work. It doesn't conform to reality. If you do not require appreciation for your efforts, you are either a saint, or B, neurotic. Most people are not saints. If you are neurotic, it is because you allow yourself to be treated badly. You tolerate abuse. You show little concern for yourself, and you train your mate to be so selfish that he or she becomes impossible to live with. In all the years I have counseled people, I have never met one person who fell out of love because his or her partner was perfect. There is always a long list of complaints one person has about the other. I find that the strained feelings can be relieved if I can get the rejected party to understand what the frustrations are in his or her lover and to remove them. If love is not totally dead, this method will usually revive the flickering flame. This point is crucial for you, the jealous person, to understand. When you feel your lover is losing interest, don't deny him or her those things that are deeply desired and needed. What That's what you do when you attack, become too possessive, or show how insecure you are. Your partner didn't marry you to be criticized all day. He or she expected to be made happy and to have fun living with you. So, if your husband wants a cleaner house, clean it. He'll love you for it. If your wife wants to socialize more, let her. It will strengthen your marriage. If he likes to dance with every woman in the place, let him. You'll make more points that way than you will if you have a scene. Look at it this way: we don't love people directly, we love what they do for us. We love their acts, not them. But what if he wants to have an affair? Do you let him do that and still expect more love? Of course not. There is a point beyond which you do not want to go to please anyone. It's called the point of just reasonable contentment, or JRC. Let's suppose it takes 1,000 calories to keep you just on the verge of health. You use 1,000 calories a day, but you replace them with another 1,000 calories every day. Now suppose you used 1,000 calories a day, but were able to replace those with only 900 a day. In 35 days, you would be lacking 3,500 calories, and that would be a loss of 1 pound. At that rate, you'd be a skeleton in a few years, and you'd be at the starvation level. Just as it takes calories, among other things, to stay physically healthy, so too it takes emotional food to stay psychologically healthy and contented. These emotional victuals are called strokes. A stroke is a touch on the arm, a pat on the cheek, a hand on the shoulder, a kiss, a smile, a compliment, a favor, a gift. Let us say it takes 10 strokes a day to make you just reasonably content emotionally. But suppose that repeatedly you receive 9. The one you may want most is attention from your mate. You want to feel important, and when you're ignored, you feel psychologically hungry. If that condition continues for weeks or months on end, the day will come when you are so starved emotionally that you won't even be able to say to yourself that you are just reasonably content. That's dangerous. That's a dangerous time in any relationship. If you remain below the JRC level too long, 3 conditions result almost without fail. First, you will become distressed and unhappy because you feel continually frustrated. Secondly, you will begin to fall out of love with your mate. And thirdly, you'll fall out of love with the relationship. The information is vital to a jealous person to digest. It means, purely and simply, that when you are unhappy with your mate, don't push for too much change, or you'll lose the person totally. If you forbid your lover to dance with anyone but you, the total satisfactions within the relationship are going to diminish somewhat. If you insist he cannot have a beer with the boys, or she cannot have lunch with the girls, the total rewards of living with you get still lower. Be careful, or soon you may have your partner below the JRC point, where he or she will get disturbed, love you less, and love the marriage less. But what if you're still not happy yourself? You've pressured your partner for changes, and they have been made. You want more, but you know that will bring on more friction. So what do? When the other person has to become miserable to make you happy, back off if you can resign yourself to getting less than you had hoped. Or if you are miserable because you aren't just reasonably content, consider separation or divorce. The jealous person had better realize that one can push only so much before rejection and hate begin to replace love. If you truly want your lover to stay with you, to be able to say, I'm reasonably content, I like being close to you, I don't mind this too much, I'm glad we are married, then give that person satisfaction each day. Otherwise, you and the relationship are in serious trouble. All people who marry, but especially the jealous and possessive ones, seem to have little idea of what marriage truly is. They think it is an arrangement made in heaven, and that once the ring is slipped on the finger, an invisible ring is also slipped through the nose. The idea that you belong to each other and that you will stay wedded in sickness and in health is a truly fine sentiment, but not one all people take seriously. If you understood the realistic basis for marriage, you would never consider marriage a state that has to last forever. Jealous people would just love to have their mates think so because they then could do what they pleased and get away with it. One of the worst tyrants I ever encountered was a man so jealous his wife couldn't even talk to the neighbor except to say hello. If someone complimented her, even in the most innocent way, he would harass her so hard she would avoid that person again. And he was totally against divorce. I could easily understand why. As long as she believed that she was his property because she once said I do, he could hound her as much as he liked and didn't worry about it a bit. He never seemed to understand that marriage is very much like a business. His wife felt before she married him that she'd be happier with him than without, so she married the man fully expecting a reasonably happy existence. When he became insanely jealous of her, she lost her feelings of love because he wasn't satisfying her deep desires and needs to a reasonable degree. Still, she felt she had to put up with it because she was married. In my view, any married person always has the option of leaving a marriage, just as a person is always free to leave a distasteful job. Suppose you work at a job at which you expect specific benefits and didn't get them. Would you feel guilty about quitting that job? Of course not. Well, why is marriage so much different? When your mate makes you miserable over the years, pressure him or her to change, then but if no change occurs, think of firing your mate just as you would an employee. For that's what we are, partners in a business called Smith and Smith or whatever. As long as the partnership makes both of you reasonably content, stay with it. When it turns sour, quit. Sell your interest in the business and start over elsewhere. How is marriage any different? 1 year, 1 million couples divorced for precisely these reasons. Or last year. Jealous persons must learn that their partners have every right to fire them in the same way that any boss has a right to fire any employee. That may sound a bit harsh, but that's the way things are. The success of a business is measured by its profits. The success of a marriage is measured by the happiness it produces. If your insecurity is so great that your mate is not happy with you, watch out that you don't press too hard or your dreams will end in divorce. You aren't the ones this happens to. You are the ones this happens to more often than to others. Your lack of understanding of how a mate and an employee are similar is your great weakness. You have only four choices before you when dealing with an unacceptable behavior in your family, job, friendship, or marriage. The first three are rational and healthy choices. The fourth is the one I don't advise. If you want to be a super lover, realize that your mate has these options just as you do, and you will be sorely hurt if you force him or her to use certain ones, especially the second and third, and somewhat the fourth. Option number one is toleration without resentment. Our maturity and common sense tell us we don't need to be alarmed over every disappointment. If you have a tendency toward jealousy, I would strongly advise this option most of all. Tolerate the phone calls your wife has with her friends. Tolerate his lunches with the saleswomen he meets with in the business world. Tolerate her demonstrative ways when she meets your male friends and kisses them politely. Tolerate his strong urge to look at other women or at girly magazines. Convince yourself that these are not truly threatening to you. Even if they turn out to create a lover's triangle, you're still better off being a pleasant but firm person about this than being an unpleasant but firm person. The crux of the argument for choosing option number one is that most of the events we fear simply never happen. How much wiser and easier it is to resign ourselves to an issue that is not very important. A young man I'll call Mark had been deeply in love with one girl for several years. After high school, she went off to college and he into a downtown business. At first, their letters were fairly frequent, but as the months passed, they became fewer. She was interested in someone else. At first, he was beside himself with jealousy. He was depressed, angry, scared of being alone. Calling her nightly was his first solution. Visiting her on weekends was his second. Seeking her pity was his third. That's when he came for advice. I asked him to examine why he felt so disturbed. Naturally, he insisted it was her rejecting of him. I refused that interpretation because it was he who upset himself. Instead, I told him to sit tight, not to make too much out of her current romance, and live through a rejection if it happened. I also reassured him that by being mature and calm about things, he could gain the respect of his girlfriend and maybe her love. Perhaps she had to experiment a bit. That could be healthy. So he relaxed, showed her attention for the next 6 months, and eventually won her back. Option number one did the job. Suppose your lover's behavior is so annoying that total toleration is out of the question. What then? My advice is to switch from submissiveness to assertiveness. Refuse to give in another inch until some concession is made to you. Unless you do so, your level of contentment will drop below a healthy point and you'll become disturbed. You'll fall ever so slightly out of love with your partner, and your feelings for the relationship itself will diminish. How firm do you recommend I get in seeking justice? You may be asking. My advice is to push as hard and as long as it takes, or as hard and as long as you have the strength for. If you stick to your guns, you may be rewarded with benefits and kindness that will make a world of difference to your happiness. If you can't hold out for all your wishes, hold out for whatever compromise you can. Any gain is usually better than none. In addition, your refusal to knuckle under will prove very helpful in the long run toward training your lover to how to treat you. I call option number 2 the strike or the Cold War, and I think those are accurate terms for what goes on. They are names for sound and healthy tactics to make marriage work. They often repair failing marriages or romances because they correct serious imbalances and frustrations between the parties. What if I pressure my mate to make certain changes and I get absolutely nowhere? In fact, what if things get worse? What should I do then? Are questions often asked. Things almost always get more tense when you stop being the pushover. No one likes to give up ways of behaving that have been pleasing and satisfying. Change often comes about only because one partner is given an ultimatum or a threat. Don't let that scare you. Remember, you're already unhappy. Being more miserable for a while is simply the price you may have to pay to correct the faults in your romance. Let me urge you to weather the storm and fight for your rights until your expectations are met to a reasonable degree. Therefore, become stout-hearted and resolve not to do favors until you receive some. Do anything you consider ethical. Don't be cooperative. Be nice, be calm, but don't give in. Agree with all the arguments, but don't give in. Listen calmly to all the attempts to make you feel guilty, but don't give in. Let yourself be accused of being crazy, but don't give in. If you value your health, your love for your mate, and if you care for your family, don't give in unless you get your level of contentment raised to a reasonable degree. Not only do you continue to suffer, but so does your partner and the children. An unhappy wife or husband is not good in any relationship. Resist the temptation for temporary relief, or you will all be miserable in the long run. Are you really serious, you ask? You bet I am. Workers in the world go on strike all the time for improved conditions. Striking is an accepted, well respected practice among discontented parties. It has improved workers' lives for years. It can do the same for lovers. Unconditional love. The notion has been passed down for generations from parents to children that the best way to preserve a relationship such as a marriage is to love the other person unconditionally, no matter what he or she does, no matter how sloppy the house gets, and no matter how many times he smashes up the furniture. Such behavior will stop if you only show that person enough love. So the belief goes. Many people of strong faith believe in the wonders of self denial and love without expectation in return. To go the extra mile, to give until it hurts, and then give more. To be absolutely loving and accepting of all aggressions. This calls for nothing short of saintly endurance. If you do not have the stamina for unconditional love, do not feel guilty for your shortcomings. Contrary to some views, I do not believe that type of love is all that desirable anyway. Unconditional love serves its high purpose only when it is offered to persons who can profit from that sacrifice. Infants and mature adults. These are the only ones who do not usually abuse the generosity and kindness shown to them. The infant cannot play mind games, the mature adult seldom does. A husband who helps his wife clean up the house may be returning her neglect with an act of love. If he does this every weekend for a month, she, if she is mature and could do those chores at other times, could treasure his thoughtfulness and come to realize how kind he had been. Her love for him would increase, and to please him, she might get her chores done at other times so they could enjoy the weekend together. Let's suppose, however, that she begins to take his help for granted. She loves what he has done and thinks he's a great mate. Later, she accepts his help with the laundry, then with the dishes, and so on. That's abuse. She's taking advantage of his kind services. His unconditional love isn't helping him or her, is it? If a woman jumps every time her husband yells, and she hopes thereby to make her marriage stronger by so doing, all she succeeds in accomplishing is teaching him to yell again. The mature man, however, would say, I'm sorry I yelled at you, honey. Thanks for doing me that favor anyway. But hereafter, let me help you too. The immature man rationalizes that he had the right to his request and that she has no right to complain. By loving unconditionally, you reward your partner for mature or immature behavior, depending on which type you are getting. That will never work for long that will never work for long for the average person. The worse one partner becomes, the more decent the other is in return. How is the partner to know which actions are unacceptable? By your politely mentioning it, but that's my point. Only mature people can see the error in their ways by being gently pressured into change. Selfish people need to be confronted with views other than their own. And when you present views forcefully, you are not being unconditionally loving. If you truly care, don't let your mate become a selfish, inconsiderate person by putting specific conditions on your love. You teach that person to give as well as receive. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Remember, the totally tolerant person cares only for the welfare of others. Just as you would discipline a child to make the child behave better, so I would advise you to discipline the adult who is emotionally immature to be respectful of the deep desires or needs of others. In the end, you will be happier and have more self-respect, and your partner will have grown more toward being the kind of person whom you can love. Believe it or not, option number 2 saves many more marriages and prevents many more numerous breakdowns that not using it does. One caution: before getting tough with your lover, make sure you have been nice first for at least a month. The more difficult your partner is, the more loving you can be. The strategy can turn very unreasonable people into cooperative ones. However, if this does not work, then put on the pressure and get difficult. Do not love unconditionally unless you want to feel like you have been run over by a truck. Separation or divorce. Option number 3 is separation or divorce. If you cannot tolerate your lover's behavior without resentment, option number 1, and you have tried putting on great pressure to bring a halt to that behavior that has not worked, option number 2, you may want to try option number 3, separation or divorce. After putting up with her reckless spending for years, you have doubtless thought of avoiding those headaches by obtaining a separation or divorce. After tolerating his poor work history for years, you have doubtless thought of avoiding those headaches by obtaining a separation or divorce. People seldom take these steps casually. I never recommend this option until the first 2 options have been exhausted. Then, and only then, does this become a proper choice. In this respect, marriage counselors differ. Some urge the marriage partners to stay together no matter what. You could be getting the 3rd degree every other day of your life and slowly go crazy, and some counselor would advise you to put up with your mate's jealous rages and accusations forever because you said you would do so in your wedding vows. That's why so many people who consider option number 3 don't take it. They feel guilty for going back on their word. I don't think they would be doing that. When you vow that you will love your mate in sickness and in health, you normally have some reservations, even though they may never have been expressed, which would cancel those promises. You might be perfectly agreeable to nursing your mate who lost a leg, became partially paralyzed, or developed periodic emotional problems. Would you also include a nightly quarrel, a monthly beating, infidelity, abuse of the children, chronic gambling that keeps you on the verge of poverty, incest, or venereal disease? Any thinking person puts a silent limit on what he or she would tolerate from the partner. It's always advisable to specify before the marriage what those limits will be. However, whether talked about or not, they are there. Practically never does a person truly believe that there are absolutely no conditions at all that could not be tolerated. Separation or divorce can be healthy moves if and when they seem necessary. It is hoped that the unreasonable mate will be taught to be more reasonable in the future. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 divorces before that person wakes up, just as some persons finally learn how to get along at work after being fired a half a dozen times. The wife or husband seeking separation or divorce is usually depressed and lonely for a time, but feels much better when the total picture is considered. Separation has 2 special advantages over divorce. First, it provides both parties ample opportunity to learn what a divorce is going to be like. It can spur them into greater efforts at compromise. I have seen a number of marriages improve considerably after a period of separation of at least several months. In one case, a man left his family, much to the amazement of his wife. They saw each other periodically, dined together, talked, and watched to see whether important changes were being made. When improvement was great enough, they agreed to live together again under new rules. The second advantage, separation allows for negotiation, discussion, and rehearsal without a formal breakup. Expenses are less, and the emotional impact on the whole family is also less. Divorce is like major surgery for the removal of a limb. Separation is like major surgery which saves the limb. And that's a major difference. As painful as it may be, option number 3 is better than option number 4. Toleration with resentment. Option number 4, toleration with resentment, is the one I advise people not to take. It is better to 1, tolerate without bitterness if you can, or 2, create pressure on your partner until important changes are achieved, or 3, separate or divorce. Those make sense and may eventually reduce tension or lead to an improvement in the relationship. But option number 4 is the exception. Never choose that option in your dealings in human affairs. When you tolerate a situation with resentment, you hurt yourself. That is not serious if it is done for brief periods of time, but tolerated for months, that's a different story. You do no one any good whatever if you tolerate a bad scene for a long time and get neurotic in the process. It becomes a no-win proposition. When you tolerate frustrations but feel resentful, you are turning the anger inward. Numerous problems develop when you want to assert yourself but won't. Sleep disturbances, eating disturbances, weight loss or weight gain, irritability, anger, outbursts, depression, headaches, ulcers, skin disorders, lowered sex drive, spiteful behavior, all are common outcomes of suppressing the resentment. The longer this goes on, the more the marriage suffers. Though one of you may feel that things are going great, you will little realize how much emotional acid is eating away at the once good feelings that existed in the frustrated partner. The winner in this situation is actually losing at a rapid clip. It may appear as though you have improved things, but the pressure cooker is still building up steam. When the explosion will occur is anyone's guess, but it will erupt. Instead of allowing your lover to die by temporarily pleasing your partner while you smolder neurotically, take option number 1 or option number 2. If it's option number 1, you will convert toleration with resentment to toleration without resentment. That's an enormous improvement, but it requires skills in learning how to talk yourself out of being upset. However, even if you did succeed in not being angry over the unfairness in the relationship, you might still not want to tolerate the frustration because it is nevertheless unpleasant or annoying. Then switch to option number 2, strike. That will immediately make things worse, sometimes greatly worse. It is a self-limiting technique, however. It burns itself out and turns into either toleration without resentment, option number 1, or separation or divorce, option number 3. If you're not careful, you could slip back to toleration with resentment, option number 4. If you do that, you set the merry-go-round in motion again. You hurt, the children suffer, and the partner eventually deals with a disturbed or sick human being who feels cheated, hurt, and increasingly out of love. When you contemplate those results, who, in his or her right mind, would make that choice? The following interview demonstrates quite clearly what happens when you stay in a frustrating relationship that won't change. The client, an attractive woman in her late 30s, felt betrayed, used, hurt, and depressed, but kept fighting a losing battle. She would have been much better off to find a new friend, but instead she persisted in putting up with the present one's deception and lies, all the while becoming increasingly upset. She is a typical example of someone using option number 4. Therapist. How long has this relationship been going on? Client. 4 years. Therapist. And did you love him? And did you love this man? Client. Unfortunately, I'm afraid I do and should not. Therapist. Is he married or single? Client. He is single. I need someone to talk to and be with. And one time he needed me. I have no one now. That is a bitter pill to swallow. I guess that is why I came to you. I can talk to you and you can't say anything. I could not talk with my girlfriends, no matter how close I am to them. If I never became close to another man, I would. I just would not share this with friends. I have seen too much of that, and it is bad. Therapist. Good idea. When did you find out that he was having another relationship? Let, let's give him a first name. Client. Call him Jake. I found out about a year ago. Therapist. That is when you first found out he was seeing someone else? Client. Right. And I persisted in seeing him. That is the bitter pill, that I needed him so badly I was willing to believe him when I should have seen. He was not willing to give me the proof I desired to show me that I was important or more important than she. I just had to come to the logical conclusion that I was not as important as she was. Whether there was anything going on or not is besides the point. I, of course, imagined there was. Therapist. When you imagined that he was seeing her, how did you react to him? Client. It made barriers, and I became much colder, and it was difficult for me to communicate. I didn't feel that I could be myself naturally. Once this depression started, I lost my joy in daily events and couldn't smile at anything I normally smile at. I feel very bad about this. My darling little girl has not been given a real smile. I am afraid she will perceive this. Not that she could understand anything. It makes me angry too. Life is so short not to enjoy it as fully as I could. Therapist. You said that he made a fool out of you? Client. This is how I felt. That he made a very big fool of me. Therapist. Explain that. Client. I was dumb enough to keep believing that he cared. I said, okay, you do these things and everything will be normal and natural again. He would always welsh in some manner. Then I would set up some more standards and we would begin again. I would say I was not going to talk to him anymore. I was not going to see him anymore. Then I would. Once I am near him, my reasoning is not as good. I am comfortable when I am with him and relaxed, but when he is gone, it is all back, and it never used to be that way. Therapist. What do you say to yourself when you think of his being with another woman? How do you upset yourself? Client. I upset myself by imagining what they are doing together, that they are sharing things together, that they are talking, that they are enjoying life, and that I am not. I am not doing anything except sitting there suffering. Therapist. While you were feeling jealous, were you also feeling inferior? Client. Extremely. I feel that I have been completely demoralized because of this. I think I have always had feelings of insecurity for many, many reasons, and now they are exaggerated. What are the reasons for my feeling insecure? My age? Am I having a crisis there with the wrinkles coming on and not having the kind of body or nose you want? Not having the clothes or the house you want? That makes you feel inferior because if you had planned your life, you would be making more money. You could do this for you, you could do that. Those kinds of things make me feel inferior. Therapist. Do you realize that your feelings of inferiority are things that are making you jealous? Client. Very likely. Therapist. How do you see that? Client. I look at the other woman and see she has some skills that I don't have, and maybe I could develop if I would discipline myself. I think she is prettier than I am, body, face, whatever, and that makes me feel inferior. And that maybe she is more exciting. I don't know, but I feel very much in doubt. Therapist. What do you want from him now? Client. I'd like a miracle for him to say there was nothing there, but then I don't know if I could ever believe that. He would have to show me that he cared for me. Therapist, you want some demonstration of deep, lasting affection and caring for you? Client, yes, I don't think I will get that. Therapist, what emotions are you most plagued by? Anger, depression, fear? Client, all of them. I don't know which one stands out the most. The backlash. Marriage counseling has taught me a great deal about human behavior. There was one situation, however, which I saw repeatedly and did not understand for a long time. It is my belief that love is that strong feeling which people have for others who A. have satisfied, B. are satisfying, or C. will satisfy their deep desires and needs. When deep desires go unsatisfied for a stressful period of time, the marriage develops strains. To reduce these strains, I analyze what those needs are that are needing fulfillment and show the partners how they can satisfy each other better. According to my theory, a person falling out of love whose needs are again satisfied ought to feel loving once more. But such was not the case. Often persons who were being satisfied as I prescribed did not respond with immediate warmth and gratitude. They became more distant, more angry, and less loving. I was baffled by this, and so were my clients. When I finally understood this phenomenon, I called it the backlash. It is created for the following reasons. One, when trying to make up with you, your mate mellows somewhat, and it is naturally easier for you to register feelings of anger and resentment at that time. You have bottled up hate and bitterness, and these emotions must be drained off before you can allow yourself to feel loving again. This process takes days, weeks, or months, depending on how intense the anger is. The sooner you talk yourself out of feeling resentful, or the sooner you ventilate those feelings, the sooner you get rid of them. 2. You may find yourself becoming angry because your mate changed after one or several talks with the marriage counselor. That can be a bitter experience. You have screamed at your partner for years. You have pleaded, cried, protested, and nothing worked. Then, following talks with your counselor, your partner comprehends your concerns and makes significant changes almost overnight. Small wonder you feel frustrated, even though you appreciate the changes. 3. While you were living in a condition of considerable frustration for all those months and years, you probably developed fantasies of what you would do after the divorce, or you fantasized whom you would go with. You were beginning to plan a new life for yourself, and now you have to give up all those plans. This is clearly another logical reason for annoyance and resentment. Though you may enjoy the revival of your marriage, it comes at the cost of losing your future that you might have had great satisfaction for you. There you have the backlash. Accept it when you are trying to repair your love relationship. It can last for months. Let it run its course. Don't fight it. Your warmest overtures will continue to be repaid with verbal attacks, emotional coldness, and complaints of long forgotten, thoughtless acts. Be patient. I suggest you keep this program up for 3 to 6 months. If your lover has an ounce of feeling left, that much time ought to revive those few embers of affection to a normal flame. If 3 to 6 months of satisfying deep desires and needs does not revive feelings of love again, then and only then can we be sure that the love is almost certainly dead. The win-lose outcome. You'll never be a super lover if you insist on getting your way at any cost. No one normally loves a person who is greedy, inconsiderate, and spoiled. That's what you became when you won't compromise and when you insist on getting your way far beyond what is needed to make you reasonably content. Those last two words are the key to your understanding of how much pressure you want to apply in order to win. Winning is extremely important. It's not in question. I believe everyone prefers to win to be healthy and happy. As I've mentioned already, total victory for you usually means defeat for someone else. If you can convince her there is enough money in your budget to buy a boat, well and good. If you get agreement only after you have hammered away at the subject for weeks, that's total victory for you, but a strong defeat for your partner. Ultimately, it will turn into a defeat for you too. If you honestly feel that the boat is not a life and death matter, why not apply reasonable pressure to see if the suggestion will be accepted? But if it isn't, drop it. Otherwise, you're stepping beyond what is reasonable. How do you know when your request is reasonable or unreasonable? By the way you feel about it. If the thought of not getting your boat proves highly distressing, then stick to your guns and don't give in. If you do that often and eventually lose the love of those you are always pressuring, you'll soon learn to be less demanding. What you then regard as reasonable will change to a more mature level. Life will give you the feedback you need to monitor your errors. But if you push and push and push because you are positive you're right and you're not making compromises to speak of, look out, you'll be heading for a fall. Suppose a man insists he has the right to forbid his wife the freedom to attend adult education classes. She protests. He subdues her by claiming she would be neglecting the children. He wins. She loses. Then he forbids her to work for a political party after the evening meetings to join the group in the cocktail lounge. Then he forbids her to work for a political party and after the evening meetings to join the group in a cocktail lounge until 11 or 12 p.m. She protests, but he becomes so irate she capitulates. Again, he wins, she loses. He doesn't like how demonstrative she is socially. She touches and kisses in a friendly way, so common today. Repeatedly, he accuses her of wanting to make him jealous and insists that she act more formally. She fights back but gives in after he comes home drunk and argues until 3 a.m. He wins, she loses. She wants a car in her name. She has a job and contributes to the family income. Even if she didn't, she'd still want the car or a car in her name. She's wanted that for years. He doesn't want to lose control, to give her too much freedom. The tighter he can pull the reins, the more comfortable he is. So, again, he demands his way and points to a point he thinks is reasonable. Again, he wins, she loses. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that the winner is eventually going to lose his mate's love and see his marriage go down the drain. He'll be wiser and sadder for his many victories, and then on her, with her, or with another mate, he may become more reasonable by lowering his expectations and allowing his mate to be just reasonably content also. The best thing you can do to become super lovers is to win if you can, but to make sure your mate wins too. You're not going to drive anyone into the arms of another by being fair. Forget the cologne, the flashy car, the fancy dance steps. Sure, they're important. Being fair, understanding, and considerate doesn't cost a thing and works 1,000 times better. Emotional blackmail. Closely related to the strategy of win-lose is emotional blackmail. By using this technique, you can easily achieve a win-lose outcome and think you have thereby strengthened the relationship. But again, the cost of winning is too much and eventually backfires. Why shouldn't it? Stop for a moment and study the following typical examples of emotional blackmail, and then ask yourself how you would feel if someone treated you with these blackmail tactics. Example: Alice resents the attention Brad gives to the children. She doesn't mind it as long as she is getting her way and has enough attention paid to her. He likes playing with children, even those not his own. She loves him deeply, but when not getting enough satisfaction, applies pressure that figuratively hit below the belt. She takes her frustrations out on her children. Suddenly, she'll get tough with them and put them in bed early for the flimsiest of reasons. Often she'll yell or strike a child for behaviors she usually ignores. And then she turns on her mate, accuses him of dumping all the work on her and being unfair because she, quote, never gets any relief. The message gets through loud and clear. Notice her more, or the children will get the brunt of her moods. That's emotional blackmail. He's in a fix, and he knows it. If he pleases himself and the children, they win, she loses. If he concentrates on her, he and the children lose, and she wins. Down deep, he'll resent this because he feels she's hitting below the belt. Her possessiveness is still distasteful to him and reduces his love feelings for her ever so slightly each time she forces him into that position. In time, she could win battle after battle, but lose the war. That's no way to be a super lover. Example: Floyd resents his wife's domestic expectation. She wants him home more so that their home can be a warm gathering place for the family. He wants to socialize with friends at the golf course and to drink with them after the game. In the fall, he goes hunting on as many weekends as he can manage. Her protests irk him. When he wants to shut her up, he tells her he's going out and will come home late and drunk. After that happens a few times, she learns to detect the warning signs of an impending rebellion and backs off. She knows she is being blackmailed by being accused of making him upset enough to drink. His tactic works, and he wins round after round, but he too lost in the end because she lost respect for him and they divorced. That's no way to be a super lover. You'll seldom mend your relationship if you get moody, angry, or threaten suicide. People instinctively know when they are being manipulated. You may actually be able to convince your partner that he or she is making you behave so emotionally, but sooner or later that won't matter. Your partner may conclude that he or she is not able to make you happy and wants to leave you on those grounds. Or your partner may see through your selfish motives and fall out of love for those reasons. To be a lover, be fun to be with. Make living with you something easy and pleasant. Don't control your mate with guilt, clever arguments, phony heart attacks, or force. If you do, you'll get your way a lot of the time, and that will satisfy you. In the end, however, you will be looked upon as a difficult person, an unreasonable person, a selfish person who doesn't care what he or she has to do to be pleased. Beware that you don't protest so much that you destroy the relationship, unless that's what you're protesting is such a unless what you're protesting is of such great importance that a separation or divorce is an acceptable alternative. If these options are acceptable, then fight for what you want. If the issue is not that important, give in with a smile. Why start a war? Be a lover, not a fighter. Love needs time. Surprising as it may seem, I have a great deal of clinical evidence to prove that love needs time. Without it, love withers just as a flower wilts, if not watered. This could come as no surprise to us when we all recall how we felt during our courtship days. Lovers cherish each other's company. They walk hand in hand, strolling leisurely, talking about private matters. They attend movies together, keep the phone occupied for long stretches of time, and often resent others who invade that privacy. That seems to be what lovers need: time to know and explore each other. Without that time, people can only become acquaintances, never loving intimates. The time two persons spend together is like glue. It is the history they have between them that fights and defeats mistresses, triangles, and divorce. Small wonder its absence is such a common cause of marital unhappiness. Watch out for the intrusion of elements that keep you apart. If you do not see enough of each other, you will also not think enough of each other. Out of sight, out of mind is a more accurate observation. It seems to me that absence makes the heart grow fonder. How is that important time ingredient destroyed? The job or the career plans of the husband can easily destroy his marriage. If he works 8 hours a day, then pores over his papers every night, what can his wife have of him? His tired body at 10 p.m., who needs it? Young husbands are especially prone to this danger. To get their careers moving, they usually put in long hours. Junior executives are expected to work whatever number of hours it takes to do the job. I know junior executives who worked as much as 18 hours a day in a row. Can you imagine what that does to one's love life? Anger and jealousy of a mate's being married to a career are the least of the stormy emotions likely to arise. Those men who are workaholics or who want to be president of a corporation should tell their fiancée about their work plans before they marry. She has a right to know what to expect. If she is looking for a mate who will be home for supper every night, she'd better cancel her wedding plans. Children are a second source of interference with the time the two persons need to nourish their romance. The more children a couple have, the more time they lose. As wonderful as children are, they require a great deal of attention. Sensitive and jealous mates can resent the partner who gives more attention to the children than to the spouse. To avert these problems, regulate the number of children you will have. Plan your family well and try not to have more children than the lowest figure offered by you or your partner. Then, 2, take time out for each other. Put the children to bed early some nights so the two of you can cook steaks and have wine by candlelight. Such moments are precious and help you charge up those love feelings. Different work shifts are particularly difficult problem for one's love life. A woman who works the first shift and a husband who works on the second have no time together except on weekends. When she comes home, he leaves. They practically have time only to kiss in the doorway as she comes and he goes. Whether it be the job, children, work shifts, or other factors such as hobbies, drinking with the boys, golf, tennis, gardening, watch your step that the activities don't separate you. Sometimes that temporary separation can change into a permanent one.